Yeah, this is the day, this is the moment we've all been waiting for. We got Microsoft and Meta platforms coming. We also got Booking Holdings coming in just a few minutes. We got Starbucks, so we'll hear from Brian Niccol for the first time as CEO of that company, Katie. I mean, today is the day we've all been waiting for.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to be here. Of course, a big earnings slate ahead of us.
Carol had FOMO.
Yeah,
she was like, I
hope she's listening right now. But of course, yesterday didn't disappoint with Alphabet. It did disappoint with AMD. Of course, all of this raising the stakes for what we're going to hear today, especially when it comes to CapEx around AI spend.
Yeah, an embarrassment of riches in terms of the earnings that are going to come out after the bell. What's notable as well is even as we're seeing indexes turn south and deepen their losses, trading volume is 24% above the 20-day average, at least for the S&P 500.
Yeah, and it gets at this idea, too, of amount of folks that have sort of moved to the sidelines, I guess, in anticipation of the political risk around the election, and whether we see that kind of open up a little bit more once we get past next Tuesday here in the U.S. But the earnings picture, I mean, it's been supportive if we do want to see that type of move higher here. All right, let's walk you through the numbers before we get to those earnings. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down on the day by more than 70 points, or about 0.2%. The S&P 500 looks like it's going to close lower by 0.3%. The Nasdaq Composite, which had been in the green for a portion of the day, down about 0.5%. The Nasdaq 100 down 0.8%, and the Russell 2000, Tim, down 0.2%.
All right, taking a deeper look into the S&P 500 as things do settle out, kind of an even split between gainers and decliners today. As of now, 243 stocks did move higher, 259 did move to the downside.
All right, let's take a look at the sector performances here. A mix, but certainly to the downside. You have tech, the biggest sector in the S&P 500, losing 1.3% on the day. That is weakness in chip makers. Staples and utilities also down by 0.25%. Communication services, which is really Alphabet in this case, up almost 1%. Financial services and REITs also modestly higher.
Okay, as we do wait for some of these numbers to cross, let's quickly get to some of the gainers on the day today. I do want to start with one that Scarlett just mentioned.
Hey, just going to interrupt you right now. Microsoft earnings now crossing the wire here. Their fiscal first quarter revenue coming in at about $65.6 billion. And we're just going to round that up to $66 billion. The street was looking for roughly 65. Revenue out of the Azure and cloud services business, ex-FX coming in at about 34% gain on a quarter-over-quarter basis, year-over-year basis, excuse me, here. And that's relatively in line with estimates as well. EPS, your bottom line number, $3.30 a share. Not quite sure what the comparison is on that, but it does look like a beat on the top and bottom line, though you're seeing the market reaction here, at least for right now. Not a whole lot going on.
Yeah, up about 0.8% in the after hours. Microsoft, that is. Booking Holdings shares are higher, well, bouncing around a little bit. They were up 2.7%. Now they are just pretty much flat. Third quarter gross bookings coming in way above estimates at $43.4 billion. Estimates were for $41.37 billion. Third quarter room nights sold 299 million, beating estimates of 290. Third quarter revenue coming in at $8 billion. Estimates were for $7.63 billion. Shares unchanged in the after hours.
Let's also take a look at Amgen coming out with third quarter numbers. Adjusted EPS in the third quarter came in at $5.58. That is better than the estimate, which was for $5.10. Looking through it, it looks like it was on lower than estimated costs right now. You take a look at what the shares are doing, and it's not too much right now on Amgen. Of course, traders still digesting some of these numbers.
All right, I just want to go back to Microsoft for a moment because it's really the behemoth here until we get Meta. And first quarter EPS, we do have a comparable number here, $3.30, beating the consensus estimate of $3.11. And once again, that Azure and other cloud services revenue ex-FX, when you back out the FX effect, 34%. Analysts were looking for 35%. So I don't know if we call that a miss or in line. It depends how investors are feeling. Given that the stock has not done very well, Romaine, maybe this is a matches kind of situation.
And that is a big deal here. And of course, that will be a big topic of conversation when we get to the conference call where they usually give their forward guidance, not included in the release. But just real quickly here, we should point out that most of their units here are posting pretty strong growth, including even in that personal computer space, a much smaller business, $13.2 billion in revenue, but that was up 17% year over year. Microsoft shares now starting to see a little bit of traction to the upside. Yeah. Meanwhile, to the downside, let's take a quick look at Roku. Those shares down 10% here in the after-hour trade here. Net revenue in the most recent quarter, relatively in line with estimates, coming in at about $1.1 billion. Street was was looking for about 1.1 billion, more or less here. But the guidance here looks like it's also relatively in line as well, 1.14 billion here. And the bottom line numbers also relatively in line. Actually, here's your number here on 4Q gross profit. And this seems to be what the market is reacting to. A slight miss on those numbers, a slight miss on a fourth quarter adjusted EBITDA as well, 30 million. Street was looking for 36.2.
All right, Roku shares down about 8% in the after hours after that report. I'm looking at shares of MicroStrategy, just a leverage bet on Bitcoin, down 5% in the after hours right now. Not
Nominally.
even worth. What'd you say?
Nominally.
Yeah, I mean, look, third quarter revenue missed estimates, but nobody really watches that because it's just a Bitcoin play.
Just a Bitcoin play. Of course, it's been doing fantastically well if you hold it, though. Of course, Bitcoin doing well as well. Let's go back to Microsoft. Of course, it's interesting. Currently up about 2.4%. And the reason we care about Microsoft, obviously, the results in and of themselves important. But you think about Microsoft and the supply chain here. NVIDIA actually gets the majority of its revenue just from Microsoft, nearly 19% there. Its second biggest revenue source is Meta, of course, and we are awaiting Meta results as well.
Yeah, and of course, you talk about how it relies, it puts a lot of orders through NVIDIA. That brings up capital expenditures and the spending on those AI chips. And for the first quarter, the fiscal first quarter, Microsoft spent $14.92 billion. That was higher than what was anticipated, which was $14.55 billion. So that's going to be a big question mark in terms of what that means for margins going forward and whether that dings its operating income as well. Oh, we have another set of results, and that's from DoorDash. I'm just going to jump on that right now. DoorDash says third quarter adjusted EBITDA of $533 million, beating the consensus estimate. Revenue of $2.71 billion, also higher than anticipated. It sees the fourth quarter gross order value at $20.6 billion to $21 billion. Analysts were looking for $20.53 billion. So even those are beats by all those metrics. The stock is marginally lower right now in after-hours trading.
Meta Platforms out, shares down 4% in the third quarter. Revenue coming in line with estimates, right around $39.9 billion. EPS at 603, and that is a beat. Here's your guidance for the fourth quarter. Revenue, the company says, will be in the range of 45 to 48 billion. Street was looking for 46. Expenses, and this is the big one, 96 to 98 billion. It had previously seen 96 to 99. So overall, holding the line on the bottom end of that estimate, but lowering slightly on the top end of that estimate as well. The CapEx spend for the full year, 38 billion to 40 billion. Previously, it had seen 37 to 40 billion. The Street was looking for about 38 billion even. So slightly higher on the expense side, slightly higher on the revenue side. EPS relatively in line with estimates.
Yeah, Meta Platform shares down about 1.6%, bouncing around a little bit in the after hours. Hey, I'm looking at shares of Starbucks right now in the after hours, down about 0.8%. The company coming out with fourth quarter net revenue at 9.07 billion. Fourth quarter China comp sales down 14%. Fourth quarter international comp sales down 9%. Fourth quarter North America comp sales down 6%. Starbucks CEO or I should say, U.S. comp sales down 6%. We're not seeing the stock move much relative to the numbers, given that a lot of this news came out ahead of time, given that Brian Niccol took over last month, and this is his first report as CEO.
And it's interesting. We are getting more Meta headlines here. They do expect fourth quarter 2024, that tax rate to be in the low teens. This is interesting. They still see significant capital expenditures growth in 2025. Of course, the whole market focusing on this. You can see Meta shares still bouncing around, like Tim said, down about 1% right now. This is a pretty clean report, but you think about the expectations for Meta. This has really been the shining star of the Mag 7, up almost 68% on a total return basis year to date. So the bar was certainly high.
Yeah, absolutely here. And we talk about this idea of what Zuckerberg and company articulate a little bit later, this idea here that the AI play, the metaverse play, whatever they're calling it these days, the idea that they seem to have found a bit of better articulation of not only what they're going to have on the consumer side with regards to the glasses that they currently have out, Orion, which may drop next year, and then, of course, how that all folds in to their traditional ad business on the social media platform. We're going to continue a deeper dive into Meta and to Microsoft as well, but we are getting a slew of earnings, including from Robinhood. Those shares, one of the biggest decliners in the after-hours trade, down about 12.5% after the company said monthly active users in the most recent quarter missed big time. 11 million users. The street was looking for 12.26. Revenue coming in a bit light as well at 637 million. The street was looking for 663 million, and transaction-based revenue also coming in a little bit light as well. Same story for net deposits. That, frankly, that is the story across all of the key metrics here, Scarlett. Basically, a modest miss, but a modest miss these days gets you a big downdraft in the shares.
Yeah, very well said. Let's also jump over to cryptocurrency and take a look at Coinbase. The shares had gained ahead of the results, but we're looking at third quarter revenue of $1.13 billion, missing the consensus estimate of $1.25 billion. As for the outlook, what it anticipates, fourth quarter subscription and services revenue will be anywhere from $505 to $580 million. Analysts were looking for $578.2 million. So that's a pretty wide range, and certainly it does encompass the estimate, but perhaps not at the rate that investors are liking, and the stock is lower in after-hours trading.
Okay, I want to take a look at Meta platforms before we go. Again, we're going to have deeper dives both on radio and on TV on all of these companies, including Meta and Microsoft. The company forecasting revenue for the fourth quarter of $45 billion to $48 billion. The estimate was for $46.09 billion, so bang in line there. Shares down now by a little more than 1%. All right, that is going to do it for our cross-platform coverage. The earnings palooza right here on Bloomberg TV, Bloomberg Radio, YouTube, and Bloomberg Originals. We'll see you same time, same place tomorrow.